Stop striving, start trusting. Buddhist wisdom for inner peace after 60. Have you ever felt so tired that no matter how much you rest, something deep inside you still feels utterly drained? It's a weariness that isn't simply physical, but a deep exhaustion of the heart, mind, and spirit, an exhaustion that sleep can't cure. As we age, this subtle, almost invisible fatigue settles within us. It's not just the toll of years gone by, but the burden of striving, fixing, proving, and endlessly holding it all together. For many of us, this weariness hides beneath the surface, masked by our daily routines and responsibilities. But here's the truth. This exhaustion isn't something we have to live with forever. In today's video, we're going to uncover a path to peace that doesn't involve doing more, achieving more, or proving more. Instead, it's about learning the gentle art of trust and release, a quieter way of living that can restore the peace you've been searching for, a way of life that doesn't demand constant action but encourages surrender, letting go, and trusting in the flow of life. This video is filled with wisdom that can change how you experience your days, especially as you step into the later years of life. I urge you to watch until the end to fully understand how trust can lead you to profound peace. If you're feeling overwhelmed or exhausted by the demands of life, this video is for you. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to stay connected with more content that can truly transform the way you live. Now, let's dive in. Chapter 1: The Weight of Striving. In Buddhist teachings, there is a story of a monk who had devoted his life to relentless striving. Day after day, he meditated for hours, performed austerities, fasted until his body was weak, and pushed himself to the edge of exhaustion. He believed that if he could only try harder, work longer, and be more disciplined, the gates of enlightenment would open to him. But despite all his efforts, he found no peace. The harder he tried, the further the goal seemed to slip away. One day, utterly worn out and filled with despair, he sat by a quiet river, his body aching and his mind clouded with frustration. As he watched the water flow gently by, he noticed a small leaf drifting on the current. The water moved without effort, without struggle, gliding effortlessly along its path. And in that moment, a profound realization washed over him. The harder he tried to force the flow of life, the further he moved away from the peace he sought. The leaf did not fight the current, it simply surrendered to it. It was in this quiet surrender, this letting go, that the gates of wisdom finally opened to him. The monk understood, true peace does not come from effort, it comes from letting go. This story serves as a powerful reminder, especially as we age, of the trap we often find ourselves in. The constant striving, the relentless push to prove our worth, and the deep belief that our value is tied to our ability to keep going, to keep doing. As we grow older, we may find ourselves in a similar cycle. We work hard for our families, care for those we love, and often feel as though we must constantly prove ourselves. There is an unspoken belief that we are only as valuable as our actions, as our productivity. Yet, Buddhism teaches us that the more tightly we hold on to this belief, the more fragile life becomes. The more we try to control, to force outcomes, to keep everything in place, the more we find ourselves slipping into exhaustion, into frustration, and into a deeper sense of disconnection from our true selves. The Buddha's wisdom is clear. The more we cling, the more we suffer. This cycle of striving becomes like a cage, invisible but heavy, locking us into a state of constant effort. We overcommit, overextend, and overfunction until we forget where we end and where others begin. The pressure to be constantly needed, to always have an answer, and to prove that we are enough, creates an inner tension that takes a toll on our body and soul. But the Buddha offers a different path. He invites us to release the grip we have on life, to loosen our hold on the endless cycle of doing, and to trust in the flow of life itself. One example that comes to mind is of a woman I once met in her late 60s. She had spent decades caring for her family, juggling multiple responsibilities, and constantly proving her worth through her work and actions. But as she aged, she began to feel an overwhelming sense of weariness, not just in her body but in her heart. She found herself asking, is this all there is? Is this constant striving really what life is about? It wasn't until she began to embrace the practice of mindfulness, learning to let go of her need to always be busy, that she found peace. Through meditation and reflection, she started to listen to her body and her soul. She discovered that by simply being rather than constantly doing, she was more connected to her family, to herself, and to the world around her. This story illustrates a key lesson in Buddhist philosophy, that peace is not found in doing more but in doing less, by letting go. When we release the tight grip we have on life, we create space for peace to enter. The more we let go of the need to control, to fix, and to prove, the more we open ourselves to the wisdom of the present moment. The Buddha's teachings invite us to trust that life will unfold as it should, and that we do not need to constantly strive to earn our place in it. A simple yet profound Buddhist practice is the cultivation of trust, trust in ourselves, trust in the process of life, and trust in the impermanence of all things. As we trust more, we find that the weight of striving begins to lift. Our hearts become lighter, and we are able to breathe more easily, knowing that we are enough just as we are, without the need to constantly prove ourselves. The message is clear. Life is not about striving harder, but about letting go. Letting go of the need to control everything, of the fear that we are not enough, and of the constant pressure to perform. True peace comes from the wisdom of trust. When we stop trying to force the current, we find that life flows naturally, gently, and peacefully around us. As we age, it becomes even more essential to recognize the weight of our own striving and to ask ourselves, what would happen if I let go of the need to control? What if, instead of chasing after peace, we simply allowed ourselves to sit quietly, trusting that it would come to us when we were ready to receive it? So, take a moment to reflect. In what areas of your life are you holding on too tightly? What might happen if you simply let go, trusting that life will unfold as it should without needing to force it? Let the wisdom of letting go guide you toward a deeper, more peaceful way of being. Let go, and peace will find you. Chapter 2: Trusting the Path. Trust is not something passive. It is not waiting idly for the universe to align in our favor. In Buddhist practice, the concept of saddha, or trust, is far more profound. It is not about clinging to rigid expectations, nor is it about fearing what lies ahead. Instead, saddha is an active surrender, a conscious act of letting go of control and embracing the flow of life with an open heart. This kind of trust requires a deep understanding of the impermanent nature of all things, recognizing that everything we cling to, whether it's people, possessions, or outcomes, is fleeting. When we surrender to the natural ebb and flow of life, we find that trust is not a passive waiting game. It is an active engagement in the present moment. Trust becomes a quiet strength that carries us through the uncertainties of life. Even when everything seems to fall apart, there is something within us, deep within, that remains unshaken, whole, and at peace. Let me share a story that beautifully illustrates this kind of trust. There was once a wise monk who lived in a remote mountain monastery. Over the years, his fame as a spiritual teacher spread far and wide, and people traveled from all over the land to seek his guidance. One day, a young, ambitious disciple arrived at the monastery, eager to learn the secret to spiritual mastery. He had heard that the monk was revered for his ability to remain calm and composed in any situation, even in the most turbulent of times. The disciple asked the monk, "Master, how do you remain so calm when the world is so unpredictable? How do you trust life when everything seems so uncertain?" The monk, smiling gently, led the disciple to the edge of a cliff that overlooked a deep valley below. "Look," the monk said, "there is a mighty river that flows through the valley. It moves without hesitation, without fear, without striving. It is not afraid of the rocks that lie in its path, nor does it try to control the current. It simply flows, accepting what comes and moving forward with grace. That is how life is. It is always flowing, and we must learn to flow with it without resisting." The monk then pointed to a large tree near the cliff's edge. "See this tree. It stands firm, its roots deep in the earth. Yet when the winds blow, it bends. It does not break. In the same way, trust is not about being rigid or unyielding. It is about being flexible, knowing that no matter how strong the winds of life may blow, we will not break if we remain rooted in trust." The young disciple stood in awe, deeply moved by the monk's words. Over the years, he learned to embrace the path of trust, understanding that true peace comes not from controlling outcomes, but from embracing the present moment with an open heart. This story exemplifies the core of Saddha. Trust is not about waiting for the storm to pass, but about learning to dance in the rain. It is about accepting the impermanence of life and allowing ourselves to flow with it, without resistance. In our own lives, we often find ourselves in situations where we feel the need to control the outcomes. Whether it's a relationship, a career, or a personal goal, we push forward, believing that if we just work hard enough, we will achieve what we want. Yet in the process, we often forget that life does not unfold according to our will. The more we try to force things, the more we become entangled in frustration and disappointment. Trusting the path requires us to release the need to control everything. It's about surrendering to the flow of life and having faith that, even when things don't go as planned, we are still on the right path. It means recognizing that life is like a river. It will take us to places we could never have imagined, but only if we stop trying to steer it in the direction we think is best. When we trust in the flow of life, we align ourselves with its natural rhythm, and the result is a profound peace that cannot be achieved through force or control. There is another powerful Buddhist parable that speaks to this idea of trust. It tells the story of a traveler who sought a rare and precious flower believed to grant eternal wisdom. He searched for years, crossing mountains and valleys, enduring hardship after hardship, driven by the belief that this flower would bring him peace. After years of fruitless searching, the traveler sat down by a quiet stream, exhausted and disheartened. As he sat there, he noticed a small, delicate flower growing quietly by the water's edge, unnoticed by most. It was the very flower he had been searching for all along, but it had been right there beside him the entire time. This story illustrates that when we trust the path, we stop chasing and start receiving. What we seek often finds us when we are no longer consumed by the need to pursue it. The flower was not hidden. It simply required the traveler to slow down, to trust that what was meant for him would appear when the time was right. The practice of saddha is about understanding that life does not always unfold according to our plans, and that is okay. Trust is not about waiting for the perfect conditions to take action. It is about accepting the present moment with all its imperfections. When we trust, we let go of the need to control and embrace the beauty of the unknown. We accept that life is a journey, not a destination, and that every step we take is a step toward deeper wisdom and understanding. Trusting the path is not about surrendering to life's difficulties. It is about surrendering to life itself. It is about accepting the present moment with an open heart, knowing that even when everything falls apart, something within us remains whole. Trust is not passive. It is an active surrender, a willingness to release our need to control and allow life to unfold in its own way. As we grow older, we may feel the urge to control more, to hold on tighter, but the wisdom of saddha invites us to soften, to let go, and to trust that life will guide us where we need to go. By doing so, we open ourselves to a deeper peace, one that is not found in striving, but in simply being present with what is. Trust the path, for it will lead you exactly where you need to go. Chapter 3. The Power of Letting Go. The Buddhist teaching of anatta, or non-self, is a profound and liberating concept. It invites us to realize that we are not defined by our possessions, our roles, or our identities. These things, our wealth, our job titles, our relationships, even our image of ourselves, are fleeting. Much like the river's current that flows by without attachment, they are temporary, ever-changing. And yet, how often do we hold on tightly to them, believing that they are the essence of who we are? We identify ourselves with the things we have or the roles we play in the lives of others. But in truth, these identities are not fixed. They are ever-shifting, like the passing clouds in the sky. In our society, we are often taught to define ourselves by what we do, what we own, and how we are perceived by others. This can lead to a life of clinging to the past, clinging to the future, and even clinging to an image of ourselves that no longer serves us. The Buddha, in his wisdom, reminds us that the more we cling to these transient things, the more we suffer. The more tightly we grasp at them, the more we create a sense of separation between ourselves and the ever-changing flow of life. Consider the story of a monk who spent years collecting objects, precious relics, fine clothes, even titles and accolades. At first, these things gave him a sense of identity, a feeling of importance and belonging. But one day, the monk found himself in a deep state of turmoil. The weight of his possessions, both material and emotional, became overwhelming. The monk sat by a quiet river, watching the water flow effortlessly by. And in that moment, he realized that the more he clung to his possessions, the more distant he became from his true self. The river flowed freely, without effort, without attachment. And so, the monk chose to let go, not just of his material possessions, but of the identification with them. He understood that the river's flow, like life, is always moving, always changing, and he could either flow with it or be left behind. The power of letting go in Buddhist practice is not about abandoning life or people. It does not mean withdrawing from the world or turning our backs on the things we love. Instead, it is an invitation to release what no longer serves us. Old wounds, past identities, and expectations that weigh heavily on our hearts. It's a practice of releasing the burden of trying to be something we are not, or holding on to someone or something that no longer fits into the unfolding story of our lives. Take the example of a woman I met in her late 60s, who had spent most of her life trying to live up to the expectations of others. She was a dedicated wife, mother, and community leader, always putting others' needs ahead of her own. But as time went on, she found herself carrying emotional wounds from the past, resentments, disappointments, and unspoken regrets. She had built an identity around being the caretaker, the one who always gave, and she felt guilty even entertaining the thought of taking a step back. One day, after years of silent struggle, she attended a meditation retreat where she was encouraged to practice letting go, to release the past, to forgive herself, and to accept that she was more than her roles and responsibilities. Slowly, she began to release the emotional weight she had carried for so long. The practice of letting go gave her the freedom to rediscover herself beyond the identities she had worn for so many years. Her experience reflects a vital truth. When we let go, we create space for new possibilities to emerge, possibilities that we may have missed in our hurried efforts to hold on. As the Buddha teaches, to let go is to allow life to unfold naturally without interference. And when we release what no longer serves us, we make room for something new, something more authentic to take its place. In a similar vein, think about the nature of a tree in the autumn. As the leaves fall away, the tree is not diminished. It is not weakened by the process of shedding. In fact, it is preparing for the next season of growth. The shedding of the old leaves is necessary for the tree to conserve its energy and to make space for the new growth that will come in spring. In the same way, letting go in our lives can feel like a shedding of old, outdated versions of ourselves, those identities, memories, and burdens that no longer serve us. We do not lose ourselves in the process. Instead, we become more aligned with our true nature, more open to what life has in store. This letting go also creates the conditions for peace to arise. When we are no longer tightly gripping to the past or the future, we can be fully present in the moment. The Buddha's teachings often emphasize the importance of being present, of living in the here and now. When we release the tension of holding onto the past or clinging to the future, we open ourselves to the fullness of the present moment. And in the present, we find peace, not because everything is perfect, but because we are no longer fighting against the flow of life. There is also a deeper lesson to be learned through the practice of letting go. It teaches us to trust. Letting go is an act of faith. It requires trust that what is meant for us will come, and what is not will fall away. It is not about forcing outcomes or holding on desperately to what we think we need. It is about trusting in the unfolding of life and accepting that we do not need to control every aspect of it. This trust is the foundation of true freedom. When we trust that life will provide, we can stop worrying, stop chasing, and simply allow ourselves to be. One of the most liberating aspects of letting go is the realization that we are enough as we are. We don't need to carry the weight of all our past mistakes, nor do we need to live up to the expectations others have placed upon us. The beauty of anatta, the concept of non-self, is that it frees us from the rigid identities we cling to. When we let go of these attachments, we open ourselves to the possibility of simply being present, being at peace, and being whole. Letting go is not about abandoning life or people. It is about releasing what no longer serves us. Those attachments, identities, and expectations that weigh heavily on our hearts. It is a practice of returning to our true selves, beyond the roles and labels we have worn. When we release the burdens of the past, we create space for new growth, new possibilities, and new peace. The beauty of this practice is that it invites us to live fully in the present, to trust the path we are on, and to embrace the ever-changing flow of life. As you reflect on your own life, ask yourself, what am I holding onto that no longer serves me? What identities, expectations, or past wounds can I release to make room for something new? The act of letting go is not a loss. It is a return to your true self, to the peace that resides within. When you let go, you make room for life to unfold in all its beauty, and for the wisdom and peace that comes with trusting the flow of life. Let go, and watch as life begins to offer you more than you ever expected. Chapter 4: Slowing Down. As we age, life often slows its pace, and for many this shift is seen with apprehension, perhaps even regret. We may feel that the vibrancy of youth has faded, that we're no longer as quick, as efficient, or as productive as we once were. However, in Zen Buddhism, there is a profound teaching that encourages us to engage fully with the present moment. When walking, walk. When eating, eat. This simple phrase holds within it a powerful invitation, one that challenges the fast-paced world we often live in. It is an invitation to slow down, to pause, and to reconnect with life in its truest, most present form. Slowing down is not a sign of weakness or decline. It is, in fact, a gift. A chance to shed the urgency that has so often clouded our days and allowed the richness of life to slip by unnoticed. We live in a culture that values speed, achievement, and constant motion, but this relentless pace can lead to burnout and exhaustion. In contrast, when we slow down, we open ourselves to the deeper currents of life, the subtle beauty, the moments of connection, the insights that can only be seen when we allow ourselves to be still. A dear friend of mine, now in her early 70s, shared with me a powerful realization she had one afternoon while sitting on her porch, watching the sun dip behind the trees. She had spent much of her life rushing from one task to another, believing that her worth was determined by how much she accomplished. But as the years passed, she noticed a gradual shift. She stopped feeling the need to rush. One day she found herself sitting still, simply observing the sky and the trees. And in that stillness she experienced something profound, a deep peace, an appreciation for the present moment that she had never felt before. She told me, "I spent so much time trying to get somewhere, to prove something, to achieve something. But now, I realized that what I was chasing was always here in the simplicity of just being. I don't have to rush anymore. Life, in all its beauty, is right here, right now." This is the heart of the Zen practice of slowing down, not to escape the world or withdraw from it, but to re-enter it with full presence. When we slow down, we make room for the sacredness of each moment. A simple act, like drinking a cup of tea or taking a walk, becomes an opportunity for mindfulness, a chance to be fully present with what is, without distraction or hurry. There's a beautiful Buddhist story that illustrates the power of slowing down. It's about a monk who was known for his extraordinary ability to walk mindfully. While the other monks rushed about their daily duties, the monk would walk at a slower pace, fully attuned to each step, each breath, each sensation. The other monks, curious, asked him why he walked so slowly. With a gentle smile, the monk replied, "When I walk, I walk. When I breathe, I breathe. I have no other destination than where I am." This story teaches us that there is no need to rush through life, no need to race to the next moment. By slowing down, we begin to fully inhabit our own lives. We can see the world more clearly, feel our own presence more deeply, and engage with others in a more meaningful way. It's not about doing less, but about doing with more intention, more mindfulness. In our fast-paced world, it's easy to overlook the small things, the way the sunlight filters through the leaves, the soft murmur of a breeze, the comfort of a quiet moment with a loved one. These moments are sacred, but they can only be appreciated when we slow down enough to notice them. The more we rush, the more we miss. There's a lesson in the way nature moves. The seasons change slowly, and though we may not notice it day by day, the changes are profound. The trees do not rush to bloom, they wait for the right time. The river does not hurry to reach the sea. It flows at its own pace, carving its path gently through the landscape. Life moves in cycles, in rhythms, and when we align ourselves with those rhythms, when we slow down enough to be in sync with them, we find that life unfolds with far greater ease. In my own life, I've noticed how slowing down has allowed me to deepen my connection with the world around me. I no longer feel the need to do all the time. There is a quiet strength in simply being. When I walk now, I walk with awareness. When I sit with my family, I am fully present, not distracted by thoughts of what comes next. I have learned that each moment, no matter how small, is a gift, and that gift can only be appreciated when we slow down enough to open it. One elderly monk I know once shared with me the lesson he had learned in his later years. The faster we go, the less we see. The slower we move, the more we understand. It was a simple truth, but one that has resonated deeply with me. Life, in all its beauty and complexity, cannot be rushed. The answers we seek are not always in the frantic pursuit of achievement or success. They are in the quiet moments of reflection, in the slowing down and listening to the rhythm of our hearts. Slowing down is not a loss. It is a return to the simplicity and sacredness of life. In a world that pushes us to move faster, do more, and accomplish more, slowing down offers us the opportunity to reconnect with ourselves and with the world around us. By embracing the present moment fully, without distraction or rush, we unlock the deeper beauty of life. It is in these slow, intentional moments that we find peace, clarity, and connection. So, as you move through your day, I invite you to ask yourself, what happens if I slow down? What might I notice if I stop rushing, stop striving, and simply be? The answer may surprise you. Life's beauty lies in the present moment, and when we slow down, we can finally see it fully and clearly. Chapter 5. The Sacredness of Silence. In Buddhist practice, silence is not the void we often imagine it to be. It is a sacred space filled with profound meaning. In our world, silence can sometimes be intimidating, perceived as emptiness, a lack of sound that leaves us with nothing to grasp, nothing to hold onto. We fill our days with noise, the hum of devices, the chatter of conversations, the endless activities that demand our attention. But in Buddhism, silence is revered as a space of connection, a doorway through which we can access the deepest truths of life. It is not the absence of sound, but a presence that allows us to hear the unspoken truths we've been avoiding, the wisdom that often gets drowned out by the noise of daily life. The Buddha himself spent much of his life in silence, not because he lacked wisdom, but because he understood that some truths cannot be conveyed through words alone. Silence, in the Buddhist context, is a place where deep knowing arises. It is not something to be feared or avoided, but a space in which we can reconnect with our true selves, with the very essence of life. The Buddha's silence was not an escape from the world, but a way to deepen his connection to it. In the stillness of his meditation, he could hear the world more clearly, without the distractions, without the ego's chatter, without the constant need to label or interpret. For older adults, this concept of silence becomes particularly important. As we age, the outside noise tends to fade. Perhaps it is the quieter rhythms of the day, the absence of the constant hustle of earlier years, or the retreat into more reflective spaces. There is a unique opportunity here, a chance to embrace the quiet and allow it to lead us to a deeper sense of peace and understanding. It is in these quieter moments that we may find the wisdom we have been seeking all along. The mind may slow, the heart may open, and in the silence, we can begin to hear what the world has been trying to tell us. I remember meeting an elderly woman at a retreat center a few years ago. She had lived a full life, raising children, managing a career, and being deeply involved in her community. But as she entered her late 70s, she found herself yearning for something deeper, something more lasting than the busyness of life. At the retreat, she spent the first few days in discomfort. The silence was foreign to her. It felt like an absence, a void she couldn't fill with words or action. But as the days went on, something shifted. She began to settle into the silence, allowing it to wash over her, and in that stillness she found a profound sense of peace. She realized that all her life she had been seeking something outside of herself, validation, accomplishment, approval. But in the quiet, she discovered something more valuable, an inner peace, an acceptance of herself as she was, without the need for external affirmation. This woman's experience illustrates a core truth of Buddhist practice. Silence is not a withdrawal from the world, but a return to it in a deeper, more mindful way. Silence allows us to let go of the constant striving, the search for meaning in external things, and instead, it directs our attention inward. It gives us the space to listen to our own hearts, to listen to the whispers of our own wisdom, and to listen to the world in its unspoken form. There is a powerful Buddhist story about a monk who, after years of wandering in search of enlightenment, found himself sitting in a small village by the edge of a river. The river flowed silently beside him, its water moving slowly and steadily. For days he sat there, absorbed in the silence, until one day a villager approached him and asked, "What are you waiting for? Why do you sit in silence all day?" The monk smiled and replied, "I am not waiting for anything. I am listening. The river is teaching me how to live, how to flow without resistance, how to be present in each moment, how to trust that everything will unfold as it should." The monk's experience is a beautiful illustration of the power of silence. The river, like silence, flows without effort. It does not strive to control the course of its waters, and yet it carries everything in its path. Similarly, when we embrace silence, we open ourselves to the natural flow of life. In silence, we learn to be present, not only with ourselves but with the world around us. Silence allows us to connect more deeply with others, not through words but through shared presence, through being fully aware of each moment. This is especially true in our later years. As we age, the world becomes quieter. The constant demands of work, family, and the pursuit of achievement gradually fade away. In this quieter space, we can begin to hear the deeper truths of life, truths that are often drowned out by the noise of youth. Silence gives us the opportunity to reflect, to understand, and to accept. It allows us to let go of the past, to release the need for future guarantees, and to be fully present in the now. One of the most beautiful aspects of silence in Buddhism is that it is not about isolation or separation. It is about connection, connection to our own inner wisdom, connection to others in their purest form, and connection to the universe itself. Silence becomes a bridge between ourselves and the world around us. It invites us to listen with compassion, to feel with openness, and to experience life as it unfolds without the need to rush or control. Silence, in the Buddhist tradition, is not an emptiness to be feared, but a fullness that invites us to connect with the deepest truths of life. It is a sacred space where wisdom arises, not through words or external noise, but through the quiet stillness of being. As we age, the fading noise of the world offers us the opportunity to embrace this silence, to reflect, and to listen deeply to the wisdom that resides within. In this space, we discover a profound peace, a peace that cannot be found through action or achievement, but through presence. So, as you enter this phase of life, ask yourself, what can I learn from the silence? What truths have I been too busy to hear? In embracing the sacredness of silence, we are not retreating from life. Rather, we are returning to it in its purest, most meaningful form. Let silence become a doorway through which you can connect to the deepest part of yourself and the world around you. In the stillness, life speaks the loudest. Chapter 6: The End of Proving. For much of our lives, many of us are caught in the cycle of proving our worth, through our work, our relationships, our roles in society. We strive to be seen, to be valued, to validate our existence through the things we do and the contributions we make. Whether it's in the workplace, in our families, or in the communities we are part of, there is often an underlying belief that our value is determined by what we achieve, how much we give, and how others perceive us. This constant proving can become exhausting, draining not just our energy but our sense of self. In Buddhist teachings, there is a deep wisdom that challenges this very notion. Our worth is inherent, not tied to what we do or achieve. The Buddha taught that we are already enough simply by being. Our value is not dependent on our performance, on how much we give, or on how we are seen by others. It is not something we need to earn, chase after, or prove. It is, in fact, intrinsic to who we are as human beings. The question that often arises as we grow older is, do I still need to prove myself? As the demands of work and life begin to soften, the pace slows, and the external measures of success fade away, we are left with the quietness of our own thoughts. In this space, we begin to reflect. What have I been trying to prove all these years? The realization that we no longer need to prove anything can be both liberating and unsettling. I recall a story of an elderly monk who had spent much of his younger years as a teacher and guide to others. His life was filled with activity, with teaching, guiding, and proving himself to be a wise and capable leader. He was known for his disciplined practice and his unwavering commitment to the path. But as he grew older, he began to feel a subtle shift. The rush, the the striving, and the constant need to prove himself started to fade. He no longer felt the need to impress anyone or show his worth through his actions. One day, after years of deep meditation, he sat quietly in front of the younger monks and shared a simple truth. I have spent my life proving myself, and now I realize I no longer need to. My presence is enough. The wisdom I have gained is not in the doing, but in the being. When you stop trying to prove your worth, you become a presence that speaks louder than any action ever could. His words were a profound reminder of the essence of Buddhist practice. True peace comes not from the continuous striving to prove ourselves, but from simply being present in the moment. When we let go of the need to prove, we can fully embrace who we are, without the heavy burden of expectation. This is not to say that we should cease contributing or living meaningful lives. It means that we shift our focus from external validation to internal peace. When we stop proving our worth to the world, we begin to see that our worth is not something to be earned. It is something that already resides within us. This understanding frees us from the cycle of striving, of constantly trying to measure up to others' expectations. There is a beautiful story from the Buddha's teachings about a monk who, after many years of rigorous discipline, was asked by a fellow monk, "Why do you still practice so diligently? You have already attained enlightenment. What more do you need to prove?" The monk replied, "I am not practicing to prove anything. I am practicing because I am already whole. The practice is not for anyone else but for myself. It is a reminder to me that my value does not depend on what I achieve or how others see me. I practice because I am at peace with who I am." This monk's response captures the essence of non-attachment, the understanding that our worth is not tied to our actions or the approval of others. The moment we stop chasing after external validation, we find that the peace we seek is already within us. The older monk who no longer needed to prove himself serves as a powerful example for us all. His quiet presence, his ability to simply be, was more profound than any action he could have taken. In his stillness, he embodied the truth of sunyata, or emptiness, not in the sense of being insignificant, but in the sense that he had released the need to define himself by external markers of success. He had let go of the need to be seen as worthy by others, and had come to understand that he was, in his essence, already whole. The practice of letting go of the need to prove our worth is one of the most freeing aspects of Buddhist wisdom. As we grow older, we are given the opportunity to reflect on what truly matters, and we often find that it is not the accolades, the achievements, or the approval of others that bring us peace. True peace comes when we stop trying to prove anything and begin to simply be. Our worth is inherent in our being. And when we embrace this truth, we free ourselves from the endless cycle of proving, performing, and seeking external validation. As you reflect on your own life, ask yourself, what have I been trying to prove? Perhaps, like many, you've spent years seeking validation in your work, in your relationships, or through your achievements. But what if, instead of proving yourself to the world, you embraced the quiet strength of simply being? What if you allowed yourself to rest in the knowledge that you are enough, just as you are? The moment we stop proving, we begin to experience the freedom of simply being. And in that space, peace arises, not because of what we've accomplished, but because we are already worthy of peace simply by existing. This is the profound truth that Buddhism teaches. Our worth is not something to be earned. It is something that is already ours. When we stop striving, we return to ourselves, to the stillness and wisdom that resides within us all. So, let us follow the example of the older monk, whose quiet presence spoke louder than any action. May we find the courage to stop proving and start being, and in doing so, may we experience the peace that comes with knowing we are enough. Chapter 7. Trust is the path. In the Buddhist tradition, trust is not a passive act, nor is it something that is dependent on external circumstances. It is not about waiting for life to line up perfectly, for all the answers to fall into place, or for the ideal conditions to materialize. Rather, trust is about embracing the natural flow of life and surrendering to it, without resistance or fear. It is a deep knowing that, even in the midst of uncertainty, the path will unfold as it is meant to. At the heart of Buddhist practice is the principle of non-attachment, the understanding that we are not in control of everything that happens in our lives. The more we try to control, the more we create friction with the natural flow of life. When we release our need for control and let go of the fear that comes with it, we allow ourselves to move in harmony with life. The river does not fight the current, it flows with it. In the same way, when we trust the path, we align ourselves with the flow of life, embracing its twists and turns with grace and acceptance. I remember a story of a man who had spent years trying to control his life. He was highly successful, driven by a need to achieve, to prove, and to ensure that everything was in its place. But despite his success, he felt an underlying emptiness, a sense that something was missing. No matter how much he accomplished, the feeling of peace eluded him. One day, after a particularly stressful period, he decided to visit a Buddhist temple to seek some clarity. He sat in meditation, struggling at first with the stillness. His mind raced with worries about his business, his relationships, and his future. But as the minutes passed, something began to shift. He allowed himself to simply be, to let go of his need to fix or achieve. Slowly, he started to breathe more deeply, his mind quieting. For the first time in a long while, he felt a deep sense of peace, as if all the weight he had carried for years had been lifted. When the meditation ended, he spoke with the monk leading the session. "How do I find peace in all the chaos of my life?" he asked. The monk smiled gently and said, "You must learn to trust the process of life, not force it. Life is like a river. It will take you to where you need to go, but only if you stop fighting against the current." This moment was a turning point for him. He began to understand that trust was not about having control over every outcome. It was about trusting that life would unfold as it was meant to, even when it didn't look like what he expected. As he released his need to micromanage every aspect of his life, he found that peace began to emerge naturally. He moved from a place of striving to a place of being. In Buddhist teachings, there is a saying that the more you try to hold onto things, the more they slip away. This speaks to the idea that clinging to control, expectations, and outcomes only creates suffering. Trust, on the other hand, invites us to let go of these attachments and move with life rather than against it. It is a trust that does not demand perfection, but instead embraces the imperfection of the journey. It is a trust that recognizes that we do not need to have everything figured out, because the answers are already within us. Consider the example of the bamboo and the oak tree, a well-known Buddhist metaphor. The oak tree, with its strong and rigid trunk, stands tall and unyielding in the face of the storm. But when the fierce winds blow, the oak may break under the pressure. The bamboo, on the other hand, bends and sways with the wind, yielding to the forces around it. And though the bamboo is not as strong as the oak, It survives the storm because it knows how to bend with the current. This is the essence of trust, to be like the bamboo, flexible and open, allowing ourselves to bend with the winds of life, rather than resist them. Life is not about forcing things to happen or pushing against the current. It is about moving with the flow, trusting that each moment holds the lessons and experiences we need to grow. This trust brings a quiet strength, a strength that does not need to prove itself but simply exists, grounded in the present moment. It is the kind of strength that is unshakable, not because it is forceful, but because it is rooted in acceptance and peace. In this way, trust is not passive. It is deeply active and it requires courage. It asks us to step into the unknown with an open heart, to surrender the need for certainty, and to allow life to unfold as it will. Trust is not about waiting for the perfect moment or the right conditions. It is about engaging with life right now as it is, trusting that every step along the path, no matter how uncertain, is exactly where we need to be. Trusting the path is not about waiting for everything to be perfect, or expecting life to unfold in the way we want it to. It is about releasing the need for control and moving in harmony with the flow of life. The more we let go of fear and attachment, the more we align ourselves with the natural rhythm of life. This trust brings a quiet strength, a deep peace that does not need to be announced or proven to the world. It simply exists in the present moment as a steady presence within us. In your own life, reflect on the areas where you feel the need to control or force outcomes. What might happen if you trusted the process instead? What if, instead of pushing against life, you allowed yourself to trust the flow, knowing that it will carry you exactly where you need to go? The path is already unfolding, and by trusting it, you align yourself with the wisdom that life has to offer. Trust is the path, and in walking it, you will find the peace you've been seeking. Chapter 8: Trusting Ourselves. As we age, we find that the external world becomes quieter, the demands of life soften, and the rush to achieve begins to fade. In this space, we are offered a unique opportunity to turn inward. The journey inward, which we may have once overlooked or postponed in our younger years, becomes more profound as we move through the later stages of life. It is in this quiet reflection that we begin to realize one of the most important truths in Buddhism: trusting ourselves. Our inner wisdom and the unfolding process of life is the true path to peace. For much of our lives, we are taught to look outside ourselves for answers, to seek validation from others, to pursue external markers of success, and to chase after what we think we need to feel complete. But as we grow older, we begin to understand that true fulfillment and peace do not come from the outside world. They arise from within, from the deep well of wisdom and experience that we have cultivated over the years. It is not about finding something new. It is about reconnecting with the truth that has always been there, quietly waiting for us to notice. In Buddhism, the concept of self-trust is not about arrogance or self-centeredness. Rather, it is about cultivating a deep and abiding faith in our own wisdom, our own intuition, and our ability to navigate the journey of life. This trust does not come from the ego, which constantly seeks to prove itself through external achievements, but from the heart, which understands that we are enough as we are right now in this very moment. Consider the story of a monk who spent years seeking enlightenment through rigorous practice, studying texts, performing rituals, and striving for spiritual perfection. He was dedicated, disciplined, and determined. But one day, after years of effort, he found himself standing at the edge of a quiet lake, feeling a deep sense of exhaustion and frustration. The answers he sought seemed elusive, and despite all his efforts, peace seemed further away than ever. As he stood there, gazing into the still water, he noticed the reflection of the trees, the mountains, and the sky. And in that moment, he realized that the reflection he saw was not separate from the lake. It was a part of it. The lake did not chase after the reflection. It simply allowed it to appear. And in this realization, the monk understood something profound. The truth he had been seeking was not outside of him, nor did it require endless striving. It was already there in the quiet stillness, in the trust of the natural process. The monk's story illustrates the power of trusting ourselves, the recognition that, just like the lake, we do not need to chase after answers. We do not need to prove anything or strive endlessly to achieve some ideal. We can trust that life will unfold in its own time, and that the wisdom we seek is already within us, waiting to be recognized. When we stop searching for external validation, we can begin to see ourselves clearly and embrace the wisdom that comes from simply being. In our later years, we may feel the urge to chase after what we have not yet achieved, to fill the gaps left by past disappointments, or to meet the expectations of others. But this path leads to frustration and burnout. The real wisdom, the true peace, lies in the ability to trust the process of life. We no longer need to force things to happen. We no longer need to chase after what is already meant for us. The more we trust in the natural unfolding of life, the more we realize that everything we need is already within us. There is a Zen story that beautifully illustrates this idea. A young man approached a Zen master, seeking guidance on how to achieve enlightenment. He asked, "Master, what is the secret to inner peace? How can I find it?" The master, with a kind smile, said, "Sit in silence and listen to your heart. The path is already there. The key to peace is not to seek it outside of yourself, but to simply trust in your own wisdom." The young man was puzzled at first, but as he sat in silence, he began to feel a deep sense of calm wash over him. The more he trusted in the stillness, the more he understood that the answers he sought were not distant or hidden, but already present within him. The moment he stopped searching, he found peace. This Zen story points to a fundamental truth. We are often too busy looking outward, trying to find answers in the external world, when the wisdom we seek is already within. Trusting ourselves means listening to our hearts, being present with what is, and trusting that, in each moment, we are already exactly where we need to be. It is a shift from striving to simply being present, being aware, and trusting the flow of life. Trusting ourselves is not about abandoning our efforts or giving up on growth. It is about recognizing that we do not need to chase after external markers of success, approval, or validation. Instead, we can turn inward and trust in the wisdom and guidance that resides within us. The journey toward peace is not about achieving more or doing more. It is about embracing who we are as we are right now. It is about trusting the process of life, knowing that everything unfolds as it should. As we age, we may feel the urge to prove ourselves, to accomplish more, or to chase after what we have not yet attained. But the path to true peace lies in trusting ourselves, letting go of the need to control, and allowing life to unfold with grace. This trust brings a quiet strength, a strength that is rooted in the present moment, in the understanding that we are already enough. So, take a moment to reflect. What would it feel like to trust yourself fully? To stop chasing after what you think you need and simply trust the wisdom within you. The path is already unfolding, and by trusting it, you will find the peace and fulfillment that you seek. Trust yourself, and you will walk the path with grace, knowing that you are already where you need to be. As we come to the close of this transformative journey, think about everything we've discussed. The path of trust, letting go of the need to prove, and the power of silence and stillness. The wisdom of Buddhism teaches us that peace doesn't come from doing more, achieving more, or controlling every outcome. It comes from trusting in the process of life and learning to trust ourselves. But here's the thing. We often overlook the most powerful source of peace right in front of us, the quiet, grounded strength that exists when we simply allow life to unfold. This video is packed with timeless wisdom and life-changing insights that can help you navigate not just the later stages of life, but the everyday moments that shape your peace and happiness. So, if you found yourself nodding along, if these words stirred something deep within, I encourage you to hit that like button. Leave your thoughts and reflections in the comments, and make sure you subscribe. By subscribing, you're not just staying connected to this channel. You're joining a community of like-minded individuals who are on the path to inner peace, growth, and a deeper understanding of themselves and the world around them. This is a journey we take together, one step at a time. So I'll leave you with this. The answers you're looking for, the peace you crave, it's already within you. Trust that. And if you're ready to step fully into that peace, don't miss out on the next video. There's so much more to explore. Until then, take a deep breath, embrace the quiet moments, and remember, peace is already here, waiting for you to trust it.